Talk Sports to Me. I'm your host, the Sports Guru. In yesterday's episode, we talked with Tusculum University assistant Justin Chatran in part 1 of our part 5 series titled Small Town Sports, Big City Dreams, 10 Ways to Separate Yourself in a World of Competitive Athletics. I've developed 10 keys to help propel your student athlete from rural America into a position of achieving, of participating on the big city scene. So that's something that we're going to talk about this week. There is a 5-part series to it. It'll be Monday through Friday. We will have another fine guest tonight, a young man that, in the words of our current generation of basketball players and athletes, would be considered a walking bucket. He will tap in with us in just a few minutes. Part 2 of our 5-part series starts now. All syndications of our podcast are available on Anchor.fm, Spotify, Breaker Radio, Castbox, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast. Go to any of those streaming sites and just search Talk Sports to Me, keyword Jason Thompson or Orab Sports Complex. Small town sports, big city dreams, 10 ways to separate yourself in a world of competitive athletics. Everything in our world that we live in is a competition. And there's always a winner and there's always a loser. And so I want to be matter of fact that if anyone's ever told you that all that matters is that you play hard, they've lied to you, because there's always a winner and there's always a loser. And being honest with your athlete is something that I think enough parents don't do. I think enough coaches don't do. And a lot of times, because we're not honest with our athlete, we put our student athlete in a position to have unrealistic goals and unrealistic aspirations. One of the biggest issues the common athlete runs into is that of being misled, misinformed, and misguided. And when I say misled, telling your child to pursue whatever path it is that they want to choose. It's not always healthy to allow your student athlete to choose their own path. Now, I say that in a sense that it's not necessarily healthy to make your student athlete do exactly what it is that you want them to do. Let them participate in what it is that they want to participate in. But one of the biggest keys to the whole thing is making sure that they understand that in whatever it is that they want to do, there has to be realistic expectations. So don't mislead your athlete. Next, they're misinformed. They're given information that's not accurate, that's falsified, and that too makes them believe that things are possible or attainable for them that is not. There's sometimes that it just doesn't matter how big you are or how big you are not, or how well you shoot it or how well you handle it. A lot of times there's just something that's against you. There's something that just will not allow you to be at the level that it is that you dream or aspire to be at. It happens a lot, and it's okay. But within that, you have to be realistic. The next thing is misguided. You are given a directive on what it is that you should be doing as the student athlete, but you aren't given the right direction in how to go about it or how to get it done. Those 3 things are things that every athlete runs into. The hope is that there's someone in your circle or someone around you that will give you the redirection towards your mission. Now, we talked yesterday about 3 things that separate the small town athlete from the athlete that grew up or played in the big city. And those things are, One, the level of competition. Are you able to go compete at a high level outside of your bubble? That's one of the things that we talked about yesterday. Two, we talked about the opportunity. Are you given the opportunity to participate at a high level with high-level athletes? And three, last but not least, the small town politics. The politics of, does the political spectrum in your community allow you to be on the inside or the outside of the politics? Because I've seen it time and time again. There's a lot of really good athletes that aren't on the right side of the politics, and they just don't pan out because things aren't favorable to them from a political standpoint. So there are many obstacles that the small town athlete faces. And tonight in our episode, our guest will go into depth on what some of his obstacles have been and, what it was that he had to do to make it, coming from a town of less than 1,800 people. So without further ado, I want to go into our focus on tonight, which last night's focus was living outside your bubble and developing a plan. That was the two things that we talked about with Coach Chartrand last night. Living outside your bubble and developing a plan. Number 3 was find your niche. Number 4 was surround yourself with quality leadership, being coaches, trainers, teachers, etc. Number 5 was outwork your competition. Number 6 was be open-minded in your development. Number 7 was find select programs and AAU programs that serve your needs, your specific needs, because you are not the same as every player around you, and you're not the same as every player that's above you or below you. You, as an athlete, have specific needs. Find people that serve those needs. Number 8, get started with your ACT and SAT preparation and testing early. There's no limit on how many times you could take those tests. Take them as many as possible. Number 9, get your internet questionnaire filled out early. And last but not least, build as many relationships with people that you possibly can, because you don't ever know what person may be the one to make that call and propel you to the next level or to the next step of your career. So those are the 10 things that you have to do to be a small town kid that makes it to the next level. Last night with Coach Chartrand again, we talked about being outside your bubble, being successful outside your bubble, and developing a plan. Tonight, with our guest, we will talk about finding your niche and surrounding yourself with quality leadership. So, with all that said, without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's guest. Put your seatbelts on, folks, because this is going to take a while. Going through this young man's accomplishments, we'll go through his high school accolades, and we'll go through his college accolades, and then we'll give him an opportunity to help us understand what it takes to be a small town athlete with big city dreams. This young man scored 2,370 career points, a career average of 25 points per game, 30 points per game as a junior, 34 points per game as a senior, 2-time Ohio District 14 Player of the Year, 2-time Southern Hills Athletic Conference Player of the Year, Ohio National Guard Player of the Year, and I would like to add a side note, that was beating out Duke and Detroit Pistons guard Luke Kennard for that award. Graduated with 25 different records, school's all-time leading scorer at Peebles High School, the Southern Hills League's all-time leading scorer, passing none other than Paul Cluxton, or his brother, and then Paul was below him. All three of those guys played high-level college basketball. 2-time first-team Associated Press All-State. Those are just some high school accomplishments. After high school, he signed at West Liberty in West Virginia, had a solid freshman year. Things weren't quite what he was looking for, and we will get into a little bit of that later. So he transferred down to football country, a place where his big brother had set some records and had an illustrious career, Valdosta State University in Valdosta, Georgia. And yet again, went on a run to create more history. In college, he was first team All Gulf Shores Conference twice, first team All Region twice, Gulf Shores Conference Player of the Year, Region Player of the Year, third team All-American as a junior, first team All-American as a senior, two-time academic All-American. During his 3 years at Valdosta State, he scored 1,754 points, making him in the top 5 all-time. Won 4 conference titles, combining West Liberty and Valdosta State together. Record at Valdosta State was 76-18 during his playing career there. Overall 4-year record between West Liberty and Valdosta State of 107 wins and 22 losses. Most three-pointers in Valdosta State history with 257. That too was just in 3 years. Most three-pointers in a single game with 12. Second most points in a single game at Valdosta State with 47. 90% season free throw percentage. 87% for his career. Career average of 21 points, 3.5 assists, and 4.1 rebounds a game. The pride of Adams County, the son of 2 great coaches, the older brother of a future Miss Basketball candidate, the little brother of a man whose records he has broken, and a real student of the game, and a hooper, number 12, Beau Justice. What's up, buddy? What's up, buddy?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for joining us tonight on Talk Sports to Me.
Thanks for having me.
I want to dive right into it. Small town sports, big city dreams. 10 ways to compete in a world of competitive athletics. And I know that, you know, a lot of people may not know this about you, but the place that you're from, probably population less than 2,000 people. Division IV in the state of Ohio, Southeast District. And so for you, there was a lot of knocks against not you, but where you come from. Because one thing that is for sure is that Southeast Ohio doesn't get the respect that they deserve in terms of basketball.
Right.
You're under 6 foot. Well, we're under 6 foot at the time that the recruiting process started. I saw somewhere you were listed at 6'2". I don't believe that.
Yeah,
You had to follow in big footsteps with your brother basically breaking all the league 3-point records and scoring records, and then you being right behind him. The year he graduated, you came the following year, I believe, and had big shoes to fill. And then you play in a conference that doesn't produce a lot of college basketball players. Now, the SHAC is a great basketball conference as far as competition, but there's just not a lot of guys that go away and play college basketball from that conference.
right.
So, you know, we're going to get into all that stuff in just a few minutes, but first I want you to tell us, you know, what you've been doing since you've been home due to the coronavirus, and how did you find out that your season would be cut short?
Oh man, it was definitely crazy. That's for sure. Because you know, even though I was in Europe, I still kind of had the mindset of being in America. As far as like, you know, when things happen over there, you think, well, it's not going to make it here. You know, and that being in China, I was still in Spain, so I was, you know, the farthest European country over next to America. So even when my teammates were like, oh, haha, someone coughed, you're like, oh, that's Corona, blah, blah, blah. And I remember the days pretty easily because, you know, my mom, she was freaking out, even though, like, it wasn't that big of a deal. She was freaking out.
Right.
So I started remembering the days. Now she was messaging me. She's like, oh, there's 500 cases here. There's da-da-da here. I wasn't really paying attention to it. And then my teammate told me, he's like, you know, man, there's a town like 30 minutes away that has like 30 people, like 30 to 40 people with coronavirus. I'm like, what? And I started freaking out a little bit. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a lot of people. And, you know, I started talking to mom more, and I started looking into it because I wasn't paying attention much to nothing but basketball and working out.
Right.
And with the 6-hour time difference, you know, you work out, you play ball, and then you come home, you might do some push-ups, sit-ups, brush your teeth, and it's 12 o'clock, and now you talk to your family for an hour and you go to bed because you're ahead 6 hours. So I wasn't on the internet a lot. I wasn't watching news a lot. Which I never did anyway. And then I look and I see, like, Italy shut down completely. And I had a buddy that's over there, so I'm messaging him. He's like, what? He's like, it's crazy over here, not on the streets, which at that time, before it hit America, you know, I was like, that's nuts. You never heard of that. So now you come to a Wednesday, and we're in practice, we're kind of joking around. We have a team meeting, and they talk about, like, what might happen. And then that night, I come home, and with the mindset of, you know, we're going to play. We might play without fans, something like this. I wake up about 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's my brother, and he's kind of laughing. He's like, yeah, Mom's freaking out. She's called you 100 times. You haven't woke up. I'm like, well, it's 5. And that's when they postponed the NBA. So, I mean, if you're a basketball player, you know that if the NBA, you know, does something, it's going to trickle down eventually.
Right.
So I'm like, well, you know, it's kind of over for my season. At that point, I was thinking, because if the NBA is closing down, nobody wants to go, like, and just play. Like, a lot of basketball players don't play just for fun. They want to play, you know, for fans and yada, yada, yada. But she's freaking out. She's booking flights. So I talk to my agent. I tell him, and my coaches are kind of like, you know, we don't want you to leave at all because what if we come back? I'm like, based on what it looks like, I don't think we'll come back. But they're like, you're not leaving. So I had a little bit of issue because they wanted me to stay, being the leading scorer and all. You know how that is. They kind of
right. Your hands are tied.
Yeah,
and they've got your money.
They got my money. Yeah, I'm trying to get, you know, because it was midway through March. So I'm like, I'm trying to get. They pay by month. So I'm like, how are they gonna do this? They're supposed to buy my flight back. So I started looking at flights. My agent figured it out. They weren't gonna, like, because they can sue you if you breach your contract.
Right.
And they weren't gonna do all that junk. And I find a flight that's actually, I think it was like $2,000 some euros, I guess, for a single flight to Miami from Spain. So I just looked at round trips just to be like, yo, look, I can tell them I'm coming back. If it ends, I'll have a round trip. And it went down to like $500. So I bought that in like 2 seconds. Got on the plane, got back here Saturday. The next day, they shut down all of Spain. No one was in and out. So I wouldn't have made it out if I waited any longer.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was crazy. And then my brother came down from Georgia. He picked me up in Miami. I got to see a buddy that lives there in Fort Lauderdale, Delray area. We hung out there and then came back and got his wife, kid, my girlfriend, and we headed to Ohio. And that's where I was for most of the past, I got home in March until April. I was there, and now I'm down with my girlfriend and her family is down in Florida. And I haven't been doing much because I fractured my foot. And that was another thing that they told me it wasn't fractured. They said it was a bone spur, and then I think it was kind of because they wanted me to keep playing. But you know me, I'm like, look, if it's not going to get worse, I'll play through pain. That's no problem.
You know, Chris Lofton has had some injuries, and let's just say that he's brought some injuries back to the States with him that weren't diagnosed as injuries in Europe. We know in his time.
I think I'm starting to get into that a little bit.
That he was over there.
Yeah. He was in Spain too, wasn't he?
Right, yeah, he has been. He has been in Spain, yes. He's had a couple of stints in Spain. He's had some stints in Turkey. So tell us about your current current playing situation as it was before you had to come back, or before you made it back, before you weren't allowed back, and how was your season going? I noticed you said you were the leading scorer, so you know how was that going for you?
Well, first once I got over there, and it's an entirely different world over there. You know, they all say that, but you don't quite get the experience until you're firsthand. I get over there and the gym is owned by the government, and I just came from a university where the university owns it, where my brother was a coach. I've always had a key to the gym, and I'm always in there more than anybody else. So I'm sitting here like, all right, what's the hours? When can I come? They're like, yo, we got 3 hours a day. We're having 2 practices, and then we're in the weight room for an hour and a half, and that's it. And then I would show up. I'd ride a bike there, like 2 miles maybe. I'd ride a bike there and back to get extra work in because I was like going stir crazy, not doing extra shooting or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And it's because like the skill level to an average European player isn't what would be close to, I think, an average American player. And I'm not saying that because I'm biased. I'm saying it because I think it's true.
Right.
They just don't believe in, like, you know, you'll have one shooter and he's really good at shooting, but he couldn't dribble and chew gum at the same time.
Right.
So you're like, you know, in America, you're trying to be the best shooter, you're trying to be the best passer, you're trying to be the best defender if you're really competitive, which, knowing, like, you know me, that's how it was.
Right.
So I get aggravated at times with the system that they try to play. They try to play a system in which, you know, an average Joe could play if he could just not turn it over.
Right.
So it took a little bit, like there was no one-on-one aspect of it, which I was like, I at least need a little bit of time to set my man up and that type of thing in basketball, this American style versus European. And I struggled a little bit, but I kind of got into that groove again. If you look back on my history of how I played, my first year of doing a different level has always been average or below average. My freshman year at Westliv, 10 points a game. My freshman year at Peebles, 10 points a game, which is good. But when you're looking at your brother who averaged 24, 25 as a freshman, whatever it was, and you look at what he did in college level and some people you know that you know you're just as good as, you know, 10 points a game doesn't seem as much. But I was kind of hitting that over there to where I'm like, you know, Dad's hype. Like he's like, oh, you got 9 tonight. Good job.
Right.
Like, you know, I score 40 on any given night. Like 9 is, you know, I don't want 9.
Right.
But that this year it kind of molded. Like you could see my freshman year. Like this is how I seen it. I was like, I'm learning my freshman year. Just nip it off, get better, figure out little ways to score, and then eventually I started to erupt later on. And like at the beginning, I think my first game was 10 or 12. The next game they boxed and won me. And I was like, why are you boxing one somebody that just had 10 or 12 points?
Over there?
Yeah, I got boxed one like 3 times over there.
That's
and I was
funny.
like, you gotta be kidding me. And it was funny because JC was talking to me because she played before me, or she was playing after me. She's like, I don't want to get boxed in one. You guys haven't been boxed in one for a long time. I'm like, JC, I got boxed in one in college. She's like, yeah, but now you're over there. And then she watched the game. She was laughing. She's like, well, I guess they boxed in one. You're there too. I was like, yeah. So it kind of got out to where, you know, I was a scorer, and I had a couple games of, you know, 20s. I was getting up to where I'm getting 20s, and I'm getting, you know, a game of 8 or 9 threes, getting 30 a couple times, and then it got kind of back in the groove of things, and I started to figure out the system. But when you get to where you start scoring something, the coach kind of allows you to break that European system.
Right, right.
But it was a good learning experience, and I'm eager to go back because once you figure out everything else, the scoring comes easier over there than it does here, because if you walk in the gym now, like if we walked into play, they would close out on me hard every time.
Right.
So all my shots would come from 15-foot pull-up, kind of like it was in high school when they closed out on me because my brother was a shooter the past 4 years.
Right.
So in high school, I lived from 15-foot in. I didn't need to shoot a 3 because they closed out so hard.
Right. Yeah, you have a great mid-range game for sure.
Yeah, and that's where it came from. Is like I could, if they would be honest, Jason, if they wouldn't have closed out on me in high school, I would have missed most of my threes. My shot was flat my first 2 years. Even my junior and senior year, I wasn't what I would consider a 3-point shooter. I mean, I'd make them. I'd have games of 6 or 7, but I didn't feel pure. It didn't feel like I wasn't as confident.
You always had a lot of you and Blake both had a lot of lift on your jump shot. And when I played for your Uncle Brian when I was a freshman, I just remember in middle school I was like a set shooter. Like I didn't jump, you know, like I just kind of – and so when I got to high school, he's like, if you want to get your shot off, you got to get your shot up, because I shot from more like my chest and, you know, and he was just like, you got to get some lift. You got to get the ball over your head. I was transitioning from the middle school ball, which Ohio using the middle school ball, the girls' ball in middle school is ludicrous to me. But you know, it because it's an unnecessary transition. It's already hard enough to transition for a kid going from middle school to high school with the speed of the game and what being in high school brings. And then you add the additional ball. It doesn't make sense.
I think it's nuts. And the thing is, like, I don't know the theory behind it, that they're weak or not, but if you see some of these kids in middle school, just like it was back then, they ain't weak, but just like Dad and Brian always said, like, if you can't shoot it correctly from that distance, don't shoot it from that distance.
Right.
We don't need to adjust the size ball, because in middle school, I always shot with a boys' ball at home. And they ain't go buy me no girls' ball. Dad's like, why do you need a girls' ball for? 2 years, and you know them, they're not going to waste money. They're like, why do you need a girls' ball in 2 years? You're going to be using a boys' ball.
Right. And what are some of the challenges that you have faced being from Peebles, being from a small community, being from a community where, you know, I wore my Hickory shirt for a reason tonight. And that purpose is being, I've always saw communities like Ripley, communities like, you know, I got to shout out Ripley, communities like like Peebles being like Hickory, you know, like.
It's Hoosiers. It's the movie Hoosiers.
When we made a tournament run, when I was a sophomore, we walked in the UD Arena, and shout out to Coach Tom Jutzy, but, you know, Beau Justice was there the year before, and he had kind of built the whole thing, and Jutzy came in and put some X's and O's with it, and we were successful. But when we walked in the UD Arena, like, the first thing I did was yell, Ripley, like they yell Hickory. You know, I was infatuated with the fact that a team that was from the size of, because people don't realize, even when you're playing, and you get it, but even when you're playing like Division III basketball or Division IV basketball in high school, the teams that you play, if you run into Purcell Marion or if you run into Harvest Prep, they may be D4, but those are city kids. You know, those kids are from the city.
Like Harvest Prep is a block away from Hilliard Darby, Hilliard Davis.
Exactly.
Some of the biggest schools, and even the people I know that came from there, none of them grew up in Harvest Prep. They came in high school.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Like,
and so we're small towns. You know, we're really small towns. So what are some of the challenges that you had to face being from Peebles?
Well, the first thing is just getting discovered at all. And I would say it wasn't as hard for me as it was for Blake. And to be honest, I don't know how hard it was for Blake, because, you know, his first game he scored 46, 47. I think it was 46 as a freshman. The next day, I come home from school, open up the mailbox, it's Ohio State letter. Right. So his name was out there. But, you know, and he, when you're recruiting, and I know this more now that he's a coach, is you look at the family every time. You have a little brother, you have a little, you know, someone, a little cousin, you have something, because you're thinking, you know, let me kill two birds with one stone.
Right.
So that helped a lot. And at the same time, I think it hindered me. Now, I'll get to that. But, you know, 1,700 people, the only way that you make it there is you have to be good enough in OYB or playing Gus Mackers or do something that involves going to Cincinnati or Chillicothe or Mansfield or, you know, Portsmouth, even cross the river to Ironton, something where there's hoopers that people are playing AAU, doing something to where they see you playing, and they, you know, a kid comes up and says, hey, do you play AAU? And that's where it starts. And that's a diamond in the rough, is that type of feeling. Because even now, people don't know where Peebles is. I mean, a little bit more, but, like, if you don't play basketball, you don't know where Peebles is. You don't know where Ripley is. If you ain't in the sports, you don't know those towns. So that was the biggest struggle, just getting noticed. And once you get noticed and you get in that AAU circuit, you'll probably be on a crappy team at first because they think, oh, you're a crap, you're a country kid that you'll run through a wall for me, but you have no skill.
Right.
So you go out there and you know, you have to prove to them. You have to get beat a lot in AAU, in OIB at first. You go to those teams that have been playing together and you pick up 3 or 4 kids just so that you can play. So usually your dad coaches or he knows somebody. So we started with just, you know, Brian Roth. I don't know if you remember him, from Lucasville Valley. His dad worked with my dad. So he was in a little bigger area in Scioto County. So we put a little team together and started getting noticed. But then Dad always said the cream rises to the top.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to, you know, start separating myself from some of them in AAU and stuff. Not to say, I'm better than them or anything, but it just happened to go that way to where a team in Cleveland looked at me and I got into that, and we got into like the little bit of the EYBL tournaments and that type of thing. But as far as just high school basketball, you don't get noticed if you're not in AAU.
Right.
Because the only way Peebles would get noticed, or I would have gotten noticed, if I didn't play AAU, is that if Peebles would have went to the state tournament.
If you'd have made it to the shot. Yep. If you I was talking to one of my buddies that coaches in Columbus, and we were watching a state tournament together, and it was some years ago, and it was like when Chillicothe was there. And
Humpty Hitchens?
Yeah, with Humpty. And
I was there.
And somebody was like, Humpty Hitchens getting to Columbus, regardless of whether they win or whether they lose, if he puts together a good first game, he'll get a D1 offer, guaranteed. And he went to Akron. Yeah, so that happened for him. But
no, that's exactly what I agree 100%.
Something that every great athlete has is drive. And what drives you to get up every morning and to continue the grind? And I think I might know the answer to this, but I want you to answer the question. What drives you?
I mean, it might be beat 100% of the time, but the thing that drives me most is just competitiveness. And then it was competitiveness, if I can get it out, with my brother.
That was what I thought you would say.
Exactly. I mean, it has to start somewhere. Now, a lot of people don't know it, you probably do. And you heard the stories. When I was 8, 9, 10, I wasn't out there shooting hoops like he was. I was running around the woods. I was hyper as hell. I was all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know where I was. My dad was probably whipping me half the time for doing something wrong. But Blake always went out there and he's shooting every day. And you know his demeanor. He'll go out there and shoot all day, just easy, pure. I'm over there like Buddy Sowers. You know Buddy, don't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's my neighbor, and he said the difference between Beau and Blake is when Blake went out there, I would just hear the ball bounce, I'd hear the backboard, and then a swish. Like, do-do-ch, do-do-ch, basketball dribble a couple times, do-do-ch. He's like, when Beau was coming up, the rim was lowered, he's hanging on it, clanging on it, and the radio's blaring. So that was the kind of the difference. That's how I got into basketball, was how can I exert some of this energy, and I want to be better than Blake at something. Like, he kicks my butt in Xbox. He's better than me. Baseball, he's kicking my butt. So him and Andy come down. I go out there. I play until they made me cry. I go inside. And Dad would say, get back out there, and that's what happened. So the competitiveness of just wanting to beat him and everything and having that little bit of a drive just expanded everything. And it started when I'm in 5th grade, and like I said, he scores 46. I'm sitting there like, okay, whatever. I'm just in 5th grade, whatever. Next year, scores 1,000. I'm in 6th grade. I'm like, all right, whatever. Next year, he breaks the school record. I'm like, all right, now I got to play ball.
Right.
He's killing me. He's like, he's not stopping. There's no slowing down. It's every time I turn. And that's what it was. Just like, just wanting to be better than him. And I think that's why it's funnier that I went to Valdosta too and beat some of his records here, is that it just continued. I'm like, I'm always chasing him.
Yeah. Your mom was the head coach. Of course, you know this. I'm really telling the people, but she was the head coach at Ripley when I was a freshman. And she was really, 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 really competitive. And it's funny because to know your family, like, when it comes to like competitive fire and what you'll do to be successful, you're a lot like your mom. Yeah. And when it comes to like being laid back and more reserved and just doing your job, Blake is a lot like your dad. Yeah, and your Uncle Brian was fiery, competitive, like just, nasty at points when I was a freshman, like just wanted to win at any cost, I mean, I ended up being so tough going into my sophomore year after that freshman year, just because of my best friend in high school was one of my best friends in high school was a guy named Nick Hines, and he lived in Carroll Acres, which is the same neighborhood that your Uncle Brian lived in. Yeah. And he told us, like, 8th grade going into 9th grade, he was like, if you want to be a really good one-on-one player, you have to play one-on-one to 30. Don't play one-on-one to 10. Play one-on-one to 30. Grind it out. It doesn't just build your game. It builds character. It builds mental toughness. So Nick and I would go out there and play one-on-one in 95-degree temperatures in the heat, and he would just drive by and honk and wave because he was getting his point across. And so, you know, that was one of the things that was big for me is like he would always ask me, the key word that Brian would always ask me is, do you want to be a stud? And I was like, well, what's that? And he was like, do you want to be the best player in the gym? Because if so, this, and this has to happen. And so those are the things that I started to chase. Were what he told me.
His goals that he pushed for you.
And what is the most important thing that you as an athlete, and list like the top 5, because I think people don't understand like athletes, all great athletes, all good athletes in any sport, they all have a level of priorities, like a way they go about their business. List your top 5.
As far as basketball skill?
Well, just life skill. You know, like for me, it would be God, family, basketball, you know.
Okay. Stuff you'd put on your MySpace page when I was in.
Yeah, when you were in elementary school, yeah.
Mine would be I mean, you said it. God, family, basketball, workout, nutrition. That'd be my thing. And to be completely honest, my education is up there. Mm-hmm. But I put that with just basketball because I think so much goes into basketball.
They go hand in hand, yeah.
I think any type of education can go into basketball. Now, I've learned that as I gotten older. But let me just elaborate. God is, you know, without God in your family, like he gives you the family. He gives you the route and everything you need. Like if you don't have God in your life, I mean, that's something that you're missing out on because he's wonderful in every way. I mean, just to kind of recap what we're saying is look at, like, I'm on the podcast with you, but you chose me because of I went from Peebles and I went to Georgia, which normally you don't leave Adams County.
Right.
And then I even my parents said, and then I went from Georgia to Spain, and now I'm in Florida. You know, like that's where you go on vacation when you're where I'm from. You go every other year. You know.
Right.
But without him, none of that's possible because he put the fire in me, and what you pray for, I honestly believe if you're a good person, you're wholehearted about it, it's going to happen. Now that being said, he's wonderful in every other way. But that's number one, without a doubt. I mean, you could swipe everything else away, and I'd still be able to wake up each day knowing there's a purpose for something. Now with family, my family goes outside of just the Justices or my Aunt Net or my Aunt Christy, you know. Outside of that family, it's brotherhoods that have been built. Like once it's kind of like a mob type feeling in a good way, I guess. Like once you're in, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like once you're in, like it's like, yo, like he's family. Like I'm not going to say that about everything, but yeah, he's family.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I know that's the type of relationship that Rob and Blake, you know, got over the year. Like, so to go back on that, to touch on that, before you were probably just born, you were probably a baby. And when your mom was coaching at Ripley, Desi played for your mom. Rave's mom played for your mom. And Rave was born, and he was like 3 or 4 at the time. Blake and him and Blake. And I just remember we would have to split gym time with the freshman girls or with the varsity girls a lot. And they would just be in there like dribbling those basketballs and being down there in the corner and playing one-on-one with no basket, like putting moves on each other, getting past each other and shooting the ball up into the wall because they didn't have a basket. And so those two guys became friends at an early age, and that friendship lasted like the duration. I mean, I know Rave's been to your house and Blake's been down to his house.
I used to wake up and go downstairs to see who was down there and be Rave.
Yeah, and so I know that those guys.
And then you hear Jaron somewhere laughing.
Jaron was in there too. Yeah,
he's somewhere laughing somewhere. But
so, what are some of your what are some of your strengths as an athlete? And then what are some of your strengths as a person? And how do your strengths as a person help you as an athlete? And how do some of your strengths as an athlete help you as a person?
That's a good question, man. A strength as far as the game is, I mean, I don't want to talk about the skill because everybody can say, "Oh, I'm a good shooter." Like, you know what I am. Most people know what I am. I am a good shooter, can know how to play the game. But it's the IQ, and I think that's the answer for both sides. I would say, always trying to increase your IQ, and that's where I said that education goes with that basketball. I started reading more. The more I read, the easier the game came. And that's, to be 100% honest, the smarter you get, you just see things different. Not to say I'm smart now, but but you know what I'm saying.
Right, yeah, I know.
I think the drive that comes from the competitiveness, as far as not just like in life, I want to be just as successful in life as I've been in basketball. I'm going to use basketball as a tool for life, but I mean, that's the end goal. Not that I've been the most successful in basketball, but I've done okay. So I would say determination, strength, and what a lot of people don't put is willingness. And that goes on both sides too. I answer both of them together because those words are they're what I would use the other way. I have to read more to get bigger vocabulary, I guess. But I would say the willingness to do what it takes to achieve your goal.
To get to where you want to go.
To get to where you want to go. If it's, like a lot of people, if it's wanting to get more money, which is what most people's goal is in life, all right, what can you live without? Like the richest people in the world to me is not the people with the most money that have everything. It's the people that can go without the most.
Right.
How needy are you? Like do you need to? You know what I mean? Do you need to buy the most expensive car, or are you willing to drive around a beat up for a few years?
Right.
Do you want to go? Are you 30 and want a house and the front porch and a dog and everything else and pay those bills later, or are you willing to live kind of
modestly?
Yeah, modestly. That's a good word for it. Modestly for the next 5 more years, and then get what you want.
Jerry.
It's the same with basketball. Are you willing to get up at 5 a.m. when everybody else is sleeping? Are you willing not to eat that McDoubles from McDonald's and fries? Are you willing to, maybe if you're old enough to not drink a beer, are you willing to, like not have a soda? So that you like, to me, I think that stuff adds in. And if, to be honest, that's my most important. Like, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to, do more? Are you willing to do 4 workouts a day? Are you willing to push through pain? Are you willing to read books, even though you could look up to YouTube or something that, you know what I mean?
Right.
Just whatever your goal is, write down what you're willing to do, and then write down what you're not willing to do. And if what you're not willing to do outweighs what you're willing to do, you might as well just stay where you're at.
That's a great point. Jerry Platt used to always tell me when I was a kid, he would always say, and this is through high school and through college,
right?
Everybody wants to win. And I'm talking about Bird here. He said, everybody wants to win, but not everyone's willing to do what it takes to win. And that was what he would say about me, because I'm the guy that, and this is nothing to be proud of, but I'm the guy that if we're playing in a 3-on-3 or a 5-on-5 tournament, and you've seen this before growing up, you've seen this before. If I'm not on my game and I'm not able to help my team on the court, I'm willing to start a fight with the other team's best player to get both of us kicked out because I feel like my team can win without me. And it's nothing to be proud of, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I've seen that, actually.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, and people are like, he's acting like an idiot over a T-shirt. No, I'm acting like an idiot because I'm a competitor and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win. And I'm not saying that it's right and I'm not saying that it's wrong or indifferent, but on a bigger scale, when you talk about the willingness, are you willing to do whatever it takes to get there? Like Sean Asher has been a guest on this show before. Sean has had to cut weight for fights. I've seen that dude fast for days on end to cut 20 pounds or whatever. he's willing to do whatever he has to do to get to wherever he wants to go. Tell us a little bit about your Peebles experience, and then expand on that with your Valdosta State experience, and then, you know, use that to lead up into where you're at now. And when I say your experience, I don't mean the playing portion of it. I mean the relationships and like the people who have empowered you and impacted you to be who you are and to climb that mountain to get to where you're at.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, Peebles coming through, it's a family. Small towns are family. Whether you get along with everybody in your family or not, it's still a family. Everybody knows each other better than most people you know in your entire life will know you, even if you don't want them to at times. So when you come in and you follow the good teams that Peebles had for 8 years, and then you get thrown in there. Like I was thrown in there with some people that I wouldn't say I was friends with. I wouldn't say really liked me, to be honest. Those kids were 2 years older than me. And I was playing them my entire life. I'd play up 2 years. So, you know, anytime there's a kid that's 2 years younger, he comes up and play and he's doing okay or better than you at times. Mm-hmm. Not to say I was, but you get a little bit of resentment towards them. But yeah, I mean, you have that for the first 2 years, and you find the people, like you learn how to cut through the crap on some people.
Right.
And
they call that trimming the fat, Beau.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And that's what Dad and Brian told me too. And Mom said it too, but she, you know how Mom is. She might not have said it exactly that nicely, trimming the fat, but get rid of those idiots or something. You know how she is. But
right.
No, I mean, it was great because Blake had a good relationship with a few people. My freshman year, Jake Daniels and Adam King. I know you know Jake. You know Adam King?
Yeah, I know both those guys.
Okay, yeah. So they took me under their wing pretty well, and just kind of helped me fight the fight as far as you're a freshman on varsity, and we understand your situation, blah, blah, blah. Sophomore years, we had some issues with teammates and stuff, but the community, you could see, you could see that they could see my resilience and my determination, and a game of 8 or 9 threes, you know, blue collar town. They like that. They like that. No matter what, I'll dive in the bleachers. I'll play with a bloody nose. You know what I mean? That type of thing.
The toughness portion of it.
Yeah, the toughness, and that is what people like. They don't like the people in Peebles now. They don't like the cockiness, the I'm a pretty boy attitude. They like the I'm gonna bust you on a back screen and I'm gonna knock you in the stands and we're gonna win this game. They like the 80s. They like the 80s and 90s. And
that was your brother's team with all the swag. That was him and Andy and
Blake can't wear some of the t-shirts now that he wore in high school, like the double XLs he used to wear.
Yeah, that was the swag. That was the swag portion.
That's the crap that they didn't like. They like the toughness. They like the like you said it perfect. And not to say that the team, because my freshman team went to the district championship, but I would say the team after that had a little bit more of that cockiness because we just went to the district championship. But I'm still, 125-pound soaking wet kid, so I'm like, I got to play as hard as I can the whole time. And then a couple of my buddies that grew up, the dad coached all the way up through. We had that more of a toughness attitude because we weren't exactly as skilled as what Blake's group was. Blake's group was, I'll beat you, but I don't want to sweat doing it. We're like, well, we're going to beat you, but we're going to have to sweat our butts off to do it because, there's a few of us that like to work on skill, but everybody else is like, I'm just play as hard as I can.
Let me stop you for a second. One of the most classic high school basketball games that I've ever seen in my life, myself, Jordan Mitchell, and Derek Jolly rode to Peebles to watch Peebles play Summit Country Day. And I believe that maybe, was it Tyrese Walker's son? Who had a son? What former?
I think it was Tyrese Walker.
I think Tyrese Walker had a son on the team.
And Kevin, the guy that played at UC's brother was on the team. Kevin Johnson, Kevin Ware.
Yeah, like and they were like loaded. They were like they were in the top 5 in the state that year.
Yeah,
and
they were
two or three, and they were going to the state tournament. And this group of kids from Summit Country Day, come to Peebles, and it was a packed house. Peebles' little gym was 1,500 strong or whatever it can hold, and you went for a 50 ball, and I was there to see it. I remember that game.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's the epitome of what your question was as far as the relationship in Peebles. It was Peebles versus everybody else. Mm-hmm. And then it was, Adams County versus everybody else. Because like you said, you came. And it wasn't just Adams County, then it was Brown County. Mm-hmm. So it's Southern Ohio, Royal area basketball against these big city top league. It was a tournament game that you'd normally see in the regionals.
Right. That's what it was. And it was in a regular season.
And they decided they wanted to come down because they thought, we might not be home, but we'll beat them there. And mm-hmm. we convinced them because we knew. And I remember Coach Harry saying this, if we can get them down there, this will be their kids, those players, best atmosphere they ever played in. Because, in the city, they're a private school in the city.
I'm surprised they even made the trip out, to be honest with you.
And then that's what he said. If we can get them down there, they'll be the best environment these kids ever played in. And it was. It just happened to be too good of an environment for them because we were cheering on at the end. But it was Peebles versus everything. You had the older players. You had Andrew, Nate, Andrew Seaman, Nate Stevens down there. They were messing with the balls, and obviously you and Jordan Mitchell came. And
there was a party. There was a party in the parking lot. Like there were people partying in the parking lot. Like it was like a state tournament atmosphere. Like it was
nuts. It was absolutely nuts.
It was a great night, and you put on a great performance. That's kind of like there's always a performance with like. I'm a basketball junkie. Anybody that knows me knows I know a lot of the history about basketball in this area. I remember watching Paul Cluxton come to Ripley and Ripley's old gym, one step past half court, pulling a jumper. And when I talk to Paul now, I talk to Paul about this now. Ripley had a really good team at the time. They finished 17-3 that year, and their 3 losses were to Georgetown, to Lynchburg, and whoever they got beat by in the tournament. And Paul Cluxton comes down the court and pulls a shot from a step past half court in Ripley's old gym, and it goes in. And I read his lips, and I never will forget this. He said, "It's gonna be a good night," and he went for like 45 or something. It was crazy, and I watched it. I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I remember watching that game and just thinking like, I gotta be here. I gotta live this moment. And so I get it. How much did Blake's body of work motivate you to like propel yourself to the next level and like understanding? Because I want to go over before you answer the question. And we've got 2 more questions here, but before you answer this question, the one is the shirt. I didn't buy it. And I should have. But the one is the shirt. And I don't remember what all it says, but they were selling it at one of your senior games, and it says like 1,000 point club check, 1,500 point club check, 2,000 point club check, player of the year in the conference check, all state check, all my big brother's records ? And you had like 2 or 3 records to beat. And I remember they were selling those shirts. The only reason I didn't buy one is because they didn't have it in the 2X. But that was one of the funnest and nicest and most clever shirts that I've ever seen. Are those shirts still lingering around Peebles somewhere?
Oh yeah. We can get you one if you need to. I'll make a call up there and send it to you.
Yeah, I need one of those shirts, man. That's probably one of the most clever shirts.
The only person that didn't want one was
Blake. So how much did Blake's body of work motivate you? And that's high school and college.
That's all of it. His body of work is what drove me every day. I wanted to win. I wanted to win so much. But the winning aspect, all right, he had good seasons, okay? And winning is, don't get me wrong, winning is everything like we talked about, willingness to win. But if you're talking about me, my personal drive, because like you said, you can go out. I've seen people that gone out there and averaged 20 points, 15 rebounds, 10 assists and lose every game. So you can do almost everything and still not win, you know?
Right.
So in my mind, I was like thinking, okay, a lot of people are saying we're only going to win 10 games. A lot of people saying this, a lot of people saying that. A lot of people saying I'm not going to be as good as him. What can I control? So I'm like,
what can you control?
I can kick the crap out of all his records. And that was me on my perspective of what he drove me. And once you see that, once you find that one goal, kind of like you did when my Uncle Brian told you some things, once you find that one goal, and mine was I want to beat his all-time scoring record, everything else comes, and the picture gets bigger, right? It's kind of like the aim small, miss small. He had 20-some records too, but I picked one that I knew would take a 4-year goal, that I knew would drive me every day, that I knew I couldn't achieve in 2 years, that I knew I couldn't achieve in 3 years, you know what I mean? Something that's not going to happen overnight. So it's something that I had to really dig my teeth in and grind. And that was that. And then as the other ones come, that's where you get that extra burst. You know what I mean? So
right,
like
that
I was
you.
aiming for league record, Peebles record, same thing, because he broke it. And I'm thinking, freshman year, all right, I got to start. Right? I got to start. If I don't start, how am I going to score enough points to beat him? You know what I mean? So it might sound selfish, but it's not, because as it formed later, I had the most wins when we left, and that's all I cared about, winning. But that is what, like, that's what drove me, and that was the question. So, like, if I don't start, how am I going to score as many points as he did as a freshman? Because that's the pace. I had it mapped out. That's the pace. I didn't talk about nobody, because I still think what I'm talking about now is selfish, kind of. But it was the motivation. If you're not a little bit selfish, you don't.
Well, here's the deal. No player, and for the listeners, if you're going to give your kids a message, give this message to your kids. No player has ever not selfishly been successful. So there's been a lot of players that are successful, but there hasn't been any great player that has unselfishly been successful. Like, if you're going to reach the top of the mountain, you have to have a goal or an aspiration that you got to pass people, and you don't pass people not being selfish. I mean, you have to be, and you have to be selfish with something. Like, some people may not be selfish on the court, but in order, like John Stockton, for instance, he's the all-time assist leader in the NBA. He was the most unselfish player to ever play the game. But to get to the point to where he was that good and do that, he had to be selfish with his time. So you have to be selfish with something, whether it's going to be selfish with your time, whether it's going to be selfish with your mental aspect, whether it's going to be selfish with the ball. You have to be selfish with something in order to be great. And if you're not selfish with something, you're not going to be great. Next question. Like I said, 2 more questions. When playing against bigger players or more high-profile players, do you always feel like you have something to prove, or do you always feel like you belong and that you just got to do your job?
Neither. I guess if I was to answer, I feel kill them.
Right.
Kill them all the same. You're the worst player, I want to kill you. You're the best player, I want to kill you.
Right.
Kill them. I remember playing. I'll be honest, I you know me, I've never kept up with a lot of big names. I never kept up, so we could talk about someone, I would know it, and I wouldn't know his name, but I think his name's Antonio Blakely. He played at LSU. Played for Each One Teach One. We were playing them down there, and this was the summer going into my junior year. I had 5 stress fractures in my right foot. I crutch in on a boot. I take the boot off, I put my shoe on. I'm in Orlando. We play Each One Teach One. They're like, oh, this kid's like number 3 shooting guard in our class. I'm like, I don't give a shit.
Right.
That's what they would say to me.
It didn't matter. Yeah.
No, you have these people, and first of all, I don't believe the hype of a lot of people, because guess what? Sometimes, like, if you're from the city and you know a lot of people, you're going to get offers. But there could be a kid out in the rural area, a Ripley Peebles, that could go kick your butt all the way up and down the court. But because they don't play people consistently, or their name's not out there, they don't get the opportunity. They don't get an offer. It's politics in that aspect, I believe.
Right. That's a lot of it. And that was what I talked about earlier. That I said that one of the things before I called you, before you called in, there were 3 things that I said were a disadvantage to the small town athlete. One was the level of competition. Two was the opportunities that they were allotted. And last but not least, the politics that surround a kid from a small town. And that's the reality of it all. So you come from a basketball family, your uncle and your dad, who are twins, great basketball minds, really good basketball coaches. Both, in my opinion, both of their head coaching careers were too short-lived because they both got into administration and saw a bigger vision. And, you know, your Uncle Brian's got daughters, and your dad's got sons and a daughter, and they wanted to raise their families, and they didn't want to be responsible for an entire basketball program for the duration of a year. So instead, they just went and were responsible for a whole school district for the remainder of the year. But whatever, go figure.
Right.
So, both your dad and your uncle played at Capital. Your mom played. Where'd your mom play at?
She played at Rio Grande. She played softball, and then her roommate played basketball, and they played one day, and then the coach asked her to play that, so she did both sports at Rio.
Your mom played softball and basketball at Rio. Your dad and your uncle played basketball at Capital. Your brother played basketball at the University of Akron and at Valdosta State. And you played at West Liberty and Valdosta State. And you and your brother and your mom and your dad all had great high school careers, very respectable and great college careers. For anybody that out there that don't know, there's a little girl named Jason Justice from Peebles, Ohio, and there's another girl named Asia Williams from Ripley, Ohio. Both dogs. It's funny how this all ties in together because Blake and Rave were rivals and went at it and went through it their whole lives. And JC and Asia are doing the same thing right now, just like their big brothers did. And I think that's absolutely incredibly neat.
It's wonderful.
But your sister's a dog as well, so she'll play some Division I basketball somewhere, I'm sure, as well. But I have to ask, who is the best player in your house, man?
Me.
Hands down, without question?
I ain't questioning it. If we talking about playing, I'm taking home the cup.
And if I ask your dad in his prime, who would he tell me?
He'd say himself, probably. Actually, he may say me. I tend to convince him every now and then. Nah, he's gonna say himself.
And if I ask,
if you're in our household, I'll go ahead and answer all your questions. If you're in our household, the answer is me, except for mom, and mom won't answer.
She doesn't have time for the BS.
Well, because her sport was softball, so. We ask her. We don't ask her, Mom. How would you do against JC? We don't ask her that question. We say, who do you think's better, Mom? Me or Blake? And she's not gonna deal with that because we're gonna end up in an argument anyway.
I remember your dad told me when you guys were, and this is it. We gotta sign off. But I remember your dad told me, he's like, I saw him somewhere, and I asked him how how everybody was doing. I said, how are Blake? How's Beau? How's JC? You guys were younger. And Beau was probably a freshman in high school. You were probably 5th or 6th grade. And he's like, I'm tired of making them have to put the basketballs up. He's like, it seems like all me and Billy Joe do is make them put the basketballs up. And he's like, it wouldn't be so bad, but every time their little sister's watching.
Yeah.
And so I never will. I got a kick out of that because, you guys are truly a basketball family. It doesn't matter. People get so caught up in the level, D1 or bust. You went to a D2 school and put up numbers that very easily proved that you could have played Division I college basketball. The ultimate goal for you was to play as long as you can and get a paycheck. And you're doing that right now. And so you found your niche. The 10 things that we listed, live outside your bubble, develop a plan, find your niche, surround yourself with quality leaders, outwork your competition, be open-minded in your development, find, select, and AAU programs that serve your needs, get started with ACT and ACT prep early and test as often as possible, get your internet questionnaires filled out early so you can become an interest or name in someone's office, basketball office or sports office, and build as many relationships as possible. And I waited until after our interview to mention those 10 things. And the reason that I wanted to mention those 10 things after the fact is because I wanted to see how many of them you touched on throughout our interview, and you touched on all 10 of them. So that was a great interview. Ladies and gentlemen, help me thank this young man. Beau Justice is a prolific scorer in high school, prolific scorer in college. He's now a pro in the Euroleague. He's home due to the coronavirus, and he's not just a great basketball player, but he is a God-fearing man, and he is a great person. And so, Beau, I want to thank you for joining us tonight.
No problem at all. Thank you.
It was special. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, or wherever podcasters stream. Talk sports to me. So, Beau, thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Beau Justice from Peebles, Ohio. Small town sports, big city dreams. 10 ways to make yourself successful in a competitive environment. Thanks for tuning in. And as for tonight's podcast 21, episode 21, we are signing out. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. You are all great Americans. Take a little peek.
Stutter, my brother was happening. Take a nigga to the grave. I ain't changing room.